The bearing had got it so hot that the grease was in flames.
Welcome back to another episode of POWERTALK. Thank you for tuning in to not only myself, but also a repeat guest, Jay Foster. Welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here. Thanks again, Fred.
Yes, sir. Today we have an interesting topic. Perma is in the industrial space. We cover a lot of different areas and industries within that. Some of those are key industries for us. And so today we're going to pick Jay's brain and go back and forth about one of the key industries that really excites Jay and interests him, and kind of dive into it to give you guys a full encompassing view of how Perma does interact in that industry and different trends and things that we're seeing in it.
Yeah, definitely. No, thanks again for having me back. First time I was on, we talked pretty in depth about reliable plant and what we did there. So happy to be back. And I think this time we're diving into one of our key vertical markets, which is the aggregate industry, where Perma is very strong in historically. But we've got a lot of exciting things coming up that we're excited to share with the folks at home.
Aggregate is definitely one of our biggest industries that we're in, and one that covers and spans pretty much every RSM's territory that's out there. Excited to dive into it, but first and foremost, just can you give us a background of the aggregate industry and some of the key things that we've seen historically through there, and then we'll dive into the trends that we're seeing moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. So the interesting thing about aggregates is that in all 50 states we have aggregate production, and what that means is manufactured stone, sand, and gravel. I think some stats from last year was accounted for roughly $40 billion in sales and about 100,000 jobs just in the United States. The cool thing about the aggregate industry is its effects on downstream adjacent industries, right? So we're talking infrastructure, residential construction. So if you look at the broader impact of the aggregate industry, it literally is the foundation of our economy, pun intended. So, next time you're flying in and out of an airport, take a look out your window and you can see likely a open pit or a quarry or mine that is active, that is close by. So it's been a staple of one of the Perma industry verticals for a long time, but excited to talk about what's ahead.
Yeah. Did you know about the aggregate industry prior to Perma and just being out there in the world?
No, I had no idea. So I knew like ready mix concrete and things like that, right? That you see at Home Depot, but I had no idea of just the level of production, all the intricacies, even just some of the things that are specific to aggregate and the mining industry, right? We can talk about maybe MSHA or some of the shows and everything like that, the governing bodies around that are important and how we approach that. So that was eye-opening for me and really cool to see and experience firsthand.
When I first joined Perma, they said that we were going into an aggregate facility, and I was like, okay, an aggregate facility. And so I went into the first one and it was mind blowing.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. It was right off of a main road that I have passed multiple times, never noticed that this quarry was there. And next thing you know, I get more and more ingrained in the Perma lifestyle and the facilities that we're in. And I'm like, there's another one. There's another one. And then you start seeing these different industries, whether it's the aggregate or pulp and paper or wastewater. And you're like, wow, they're literally everywhere. But to the common everyday person who's not in this field, they don't really understand it, which is understandable. So I guess when you first started going into quarries, what really drew you to them attention wise, or like what blew your mind, understanding like, okay, this is how Perma's integrated into it? And what were some of those applications that we were in or helping customers with before we dive into the MSHA, which is a whole other topic that is really the bread and butter to make sure that all these places run safe, efficiently, and everybody's protected while they're in these quarries?
Yeah, same thing. Like I've been driving on 485 and I've pointed out a belt conveyor or a bucket elevator or something. My wife's like, what are you talking about? So we approach it the same way, whether it's a food and beverage facility, some of the other industries that you talked about, right? We're going to go in and take a complete holistic look at all of the rotating equipment that they have. The cool thing about the aggregate industry is we can cover every application from the pit where they're manufacturing and getting and harvesting the stone all the way through the process to the load out and where you see it leaving the facility to go be delivered. And that, I think, is the exciting part of it, right? So traditionally, I think one of the maybe misconceptions of the industry is like, well, it's just taking big rocks and you're turning it into little rocks, right? We both heard that a lot.
Yep.
But as you get in, you see the processes, you meet the people, you meet the maintenance champions, you find out that is not just the case at all. It's very intricate. I mean, a lot of these sites have on-site laboratories that do very in-depth testing. Their processes is very important, downtime, and unplanned downtime is very expensive and costly. Where we fit in there, I think it's a great match. So definitely makes sense why we've had a lot of success in the past and where it's a big growth driver for us in the future, especially bringing on connected solutions, other things like that that are new and exciting and can fit into that portfolio very well.
Yeah, you brought up unplanned downtime. How does perma play a role in that to make sure that those plants can stick to an unplanned downtime, meaning that whenever they shut that plant down to do routine maintenance or whatever, like how do we help them get to that point so that way they can have that assurance that they don't have these unplanned things that are going on at their facility?
I mean, the one thing is obviously the cost driver is going to be a big part of that, right? So when we're in and talking about, hey, where have you had problems before in the past, right? And they say, well, this electric motor, if it goes down on the jaw crusher, this costs us $100,000 to replace and X amount in downtime, right? So that drives a solution mindset to where we can design a product around that and find the best fit to help, negate any of those challenges with lubrication. So specific to that, like I said, it's really just taking a broader look, but then we can focus in on specific applications and come up with the right fit to help with that unplanned downtime.
Yeah. We really, from A to Z, can cover, like you said earlier, any parts of their facility, any application that they have. I've been on many installs myself, getting dirty with the guys and girls that are working there. But it's really interesting to see it because the convenience that our Star Vario lubricator that you guys can see here, if you're watching the video, the benefits that it can provide, not only from a convenience standpoint of remote mounting those outside of the cages or the guards that are on there, but it also gets people out of those hazardous areas and makes that routine route that they're doing more efficient. So the tail pulley, bringing them both together so that way they check one thing outside of the guard or cage, and then you go up to the bends and take up. They're hanging right there on that cage that's there. Move your way up to that head pulley and snub that are up top. And so it really does create the safety protocol, the efficiency, and ultimately the uptime, because as I like to say, these units are little insurance policies on the bearings, on the blowers, the crushers, the motors, whatever it is. So that way the plants know that what they're doing is getting attention if somebody has to get pulled off on another project.
Yeah, for sure. Can I tell a quick story?
Yeah, let's hear it.
So this was on a field survey that we were doing, right? So Kevin and I, our head of services, we were out doing a survey, walking a catwalk, right? So we were coming out of the pit on a long belt conveyor that had, we were probably 40, 50 feet in the air. And we noticed it was really windy that day, right? Mm-hmm. So we noticed, hey, there's a lot of kind of debris coming off the top. There was kind of some dust and everything at the take up, and we were like, kind of weird, but figured there's just something else going on. So we're walking, and I go to look at the bend at the take up there up top, and the bearing was on fire. So the bearing had got it so hot that the grease and I was behind a cage and everything like that, but it was in flames. So think about how hot grease has to get to ignite, right? So we were up there. Obviously, we followed safety protocol to get down very quickly, crawl back down, and then notify the correct people, and they took action very quickly to, remedy that and figure out. So I say that just because that day, it prevented somebody from having to potentially go and be in close contact with that to grease that bearing, right? Mm-hmm. So that's something we've seen that's actual that, a remote mount kit or something like that can help prevent. So it truly is a safety first mindset.
Yeah. And hopefully after the Star Vario was put on there, they got assurance that bearing was filled with grease. So that way that friction in there didn't get it so hot. But I was at a quarry as well, and it was on a head pulley that was getting hammered with water. And they would go through bearings about once a month, once every 2 months. And we put our Star Vario 500 on there. It has now been 9 or 10 months. It actually might be coming up on 11, and they have not changed that bearing once yet.
That's awesome.
So when we're talking about these bearing failures, the one that catches on fire, the one that loses because water dumping on it, how does our unit help with the safety and efficiency of that bearing to allow that not to happen or to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, definitely on the equipment side, we can approach it from that. But I think even more important when we're talking about the standard lube practices and things like that, it's the people side of it too. So commonly, like at a site, they'll say, well, this is our maintenance tech, and he'll fill up a backpack or a golf cart with grease, and he goes and tries and hits as many as he can. With that, traceability and everything is obviously an issue. So There's, the equipment side of it, right? Like we can design a solution, we can make sure the discharge, the settings, like you said, are correct. But it's also the people side of it, right? So now we can reallocate somebody instead of having to go manually check, manually grease, do lockout, get up on high surfaces that are potentially dangerous, lockout equipment, things like that. Now we can reallocate it. They can check on those, whether it's a connected solution or on an alternate lube route. That's, I think, that's the selling feature right there is safety and the insurance policy, like you said.
Yeah. The biggest thing that was the aha or the moment that clicked for me when I joined Perma was when they showed the chart of if you hand me a grease gun and I hand you one and we hand somebody else and somebody else, we're all going to grease it differently.
Yeah.
When that happens, when we get pulled off to go on another project, now it's undergreased. And then we go back out there with the gun and we're like, oh, we forgot this one last time. So we overgrease it and undergrease it. Where our units being in that environment where it's so dusty, the contamination, water, washdowns, whatever it is, our unit provides that steady back pressure of grease coming out of that bearing, so that way the contamination is not going in when it's under greased and pushed out when it's over greased. And so that's really cool to see there, because again, like the way we protect our units with the remote mount kits also protect those bearings from getting that contamination in there, which just increases the longevity of the life of it and might be a little bit easier to maintain than going out there and being like, oh, I forgot the grease tube today.
Yeah.
I'm not going back up to that head fully.
No, definitely. Yeah, maybe that kind of segues into, I know we spoke quickly on the MSHA side of it, but just to flip it back on you a little bit, can you give an overview of MSHA, what it means, how we are trained as salespeople, permanent employees to help out and kind of maybe frame it around what these sites are held to from a higher standard from a mining safety governance standpoint?
Yeah, MSHA is the holy grail of safety, and making sure that the people, when we are inside of those plants, are smart, we're aware, we know what's going on, and we always focus on the things that could go wrong just to keep our minds at the attention that they need to be. Because again, these are dangerous places. And so if you're just mindlessly going throughout them, you're at risk of safety and injury and all of those different things. You have massive machinery coming in and out of the different roadways and stuff. And so it's critical that not only us as reps to these end customers are safe and protected in there, because they're letting us into their environment. And so they hold us to the same standard that their workers are held to. And then we provide that solution that kind of takes that a little bit step further to be like, hey, this is our added bonus or safety to what you guys are already doing great at this plant. And it's being aware of the metrics and data that MSHA has laid out for the industry to be safe when we're there. And so everything from the long training when you're first getting certified to getting recertified every single year, without MSHA, there would be a lot of things that we wouldn't want to happen in the industry. So MSHA makes sure that everybody that's going in there is trained up to the right caliber with the same information. So that way, whether we work at the plant or we're going in as distributor, we know what to look out for, we know what to be aware of, and we know how to operate the way that the plants do. So that way they don't have to worry about us in terms of a safety aspect. Obviously, they look out for us and we get, escorted by them, but we need to know what's going on at those plants so we can be aware of the different risks that could happen versus not having that training. Yeah,
that was one of the things too, being newer to the industry. You go into these places and there's stuff happening everywhere. You got to keep your head on a swivel, right? There's big equipment going around, rocks flying everywhere, there's debris, a lot of machinery, it's loud. So yeah, having that higher level of safety, visibility shows you, what kind of solution we're providing.
Yeah. We were watching an episode of Landman that was on last year. And I bring this up because there was one episode where the guys had the yellow, I don't even know what they're called, but they measure for like toxins in the air or whatever the chemical is. And my fiance was like, what is that? How do they, what's going on? And I was explaining to her, when we go into facilities, sometimes we wear those, even if it's not the aggregate that wears those, but thinking of the PPE that they have us wear and all the safety gear, it is critical we have that, because there could even be things going on that we don't see that we need to be aware of. You follow MSHA's rules because they're there for 100%. A reason. Being what the industry has been from the time that we've come into it, what are some of the changes that you're seeing and what Perma is doing to provide service with our units for these different end users, customers in the aggregate space? Yeah,
this is a place where the LoRa in particular shines, right? We've got long ranges, we've got difficult to access lube points, and you want a complete dashboard picture of what's going on at your facility. So that's the exciting part is when we go out and we've done, some mapping and things like that in the past, to go out and pinpoint everything. Like we said, we could get everything from the pit, a turbine pump down there, all the way to the loadout. The rate of adoption of the technology, the connected piece, is coming a lot quicker than we probably could have ever anticipated. It brings new challenges, but a lot of exciting opportunities, right? So even specific sites are taking our technology and making it their own. They're integrating with other technologies. So it's not so much now that, hey, I've got a 2 7/16 conveyor bearing that's being greased every 6 months. It's now I know that's the drive side. I know the temperature. I know the vibration, ultrasound, and I can see a complete picture of the lubrication events that happen. So that's the exciting part of it from our standpoint.
Yeah, really giving them a holistic view to just tune in at what is going on at that point. When the maintenance techs come in, they can see on the screen, all of the red units, which need attention, all of the yellow ones, which are like, hey, there's something coming up, probably a change out here soon. And then they know that the rest of the plant is operating efficiently. They're all showing green. Yeah. And so for those of you that don't know, our LoRa technology gives the end user, the customer, a dashboard so that way they can go in and see what's going on at each and every given point. There's a lot of information on our website that we have with the LoRa, and I'm sure we will have a video coming out soon that is solely dedicated to that and the different, I guess we'll call it wins that we're seeing in multiple different industries. But our LoRa technology is now giving visibility at those points, which I'm sure nobody thought that a little Zerk fitting would have technology added, but we're noticing the technology changes. And since we're the pioneers of the industry here at Perma, we want to keep adapting with that technology and giving our end users, the plants, what they are asking for. And when you have the conversation about LoRa, it's almost like the aha moment of like, we do need this. It's no longer a nice luxury product to have, but it's working towards how we can be more productive at our plants, how we can produce more year over year, because it's very rare you go into a plant and they're like, oh yeah, they said we can do 500,000 less tons. It's typically the other way where they got to do 500,000 more with the
less
same,
people.
With the same workforce or less. And so there's multiple different benefits for our products with our products in the aggregate space, but anything from A to Z that has a Zerk fitting on it, whether it's on the conveyors, blowers, motors, fans, anything application out there, the crushers, we're able to service. And so, Jay, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for sitting on the podcast today, talking a little bit about the aggregate industry, and I hope to see you again on the pod, man.
Absolutely. I'll be back for round 3.
Thanks for having me. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in to the Perma Power Talk. We will catch you on our next episode.